Hi guys, welcome to the next talk. I hope you're all well and healthy at this time of your life. I really mean that. In today's talk, we're going to look at something else following on from our previous talk on integrity. And we're going to look at how we can live with boundaries in our life which will protect our recovery. In the last talk then, I spoke about integrity and the importance of it in our recovery process, about being the same man when no one is watching, and how important it is for us to realize and understand. And I guess it's a challenge for all of us that we need to be I'm speaking to myself as much as you guys. Honestly, I am. With all what I say, I never want it to come over to you as if I'm trying to tell you what to do, in the sense of I am learning this myself. When I talk, I'm very much talking to myself as well. Please understand that. But it is ever so difficult to be who we are on the outside as well as who we are on the inside. I know we wear certain masks when we're at times when we're with other people, and I don't always see the true us inside. But I just think, as I say, it's not going to be perfect. We've just got to try. I've got to try and make who I am in private as near to that authentic person as I can when I'm with someone else. So I'm not lying, cheating, being dishonest to my values, but I'm living an honest life. I want that for myself. I want to be able to put my head on the pillow at night and know that I've been honest that day, and I haven't intentionally tried to lie and cover up and be dishonest about anything with anyone. I hate the shame of that. I hate the feeling of that. So I talked about being the same man when no one is watching us. But integrity doesn't survive on intention alone. So whilst we are trying to be intentional here to do this, integrity doesn't survive with just the good intention alone. And the reason why it isn't is because if it isn't coupled with boundaries, if integrity and boundaries aren't together, then it's going to be really difficult for us to be people of integrity. What will happen is integrity will get worn down quietly, gradually, without us noticing it. So today we're going to talk about the importance of boundaries, but not as walls, so not in a negative sense. Boundaries can create a negative connotation to it. And I want us to try and look at boundaries as something healthy and positive and respectful and worthy of our time. So not as walls, but very much as protection and a protective measure, which is good, which is healthy, which is needful, which is a positive aspect of how boundaries can help us and not hinder us. Many men were never taught boundaries. Some of us guys, we've not really had any boundaries to live by. Maybe all of our grown-up years. Maybe as kids, we didn't have boundaries put in place by our parents, and we've just kind of done what we wanted. And it's been a bit of a free-for-all. And we've had to kind of put our own boundaries in when it felt right. But we weren't taught boundaries. So we learned to push through by ourselves. We learned to try and keep the peace when we needed to, and say yes to things when really inside we just should have been saying no. In addiction or chaos, certainly is true, boundaries blur. Boundary lines blur completely. Energy leaks, resentment builds, and recovery often becomes weaker. So boundaries aren't about control. Those are not the boundaries I'm talking about. I know some boundaries that can be put in place for to control situations in our lives, perhaps. But these boundaries are not meant for control. They are entirely about us having more clarity in our lives. A boundary is not an argument. A boundary is not a threat. and it is not an explanation. A boundary is a clear statement of what you will and what you won't participate in. So boundaries are about what we will and won't accept in our lives. There's some things we need to put boundaries in place for our own good, particularly with addiction. You know, where we go, who we see, what we do, how we act. So we're not relapsing and falling back into our addictive patterns. Sounds really simple, but simple doesn't always mean easy. Boundaries protect values. Remember that. Boundaries protect our values, and integrity is a huge value in our recovery that we need to honor and protect and respect. What about the cost of weak boundaries? Well, when boundaries are weak, what happens is integrity becomes totally compromised, which is something we cannot let happen. Resentment will grow and self-respect will erode away. Remember, we need to get back that self-respect that I keep talking about, which has left us because we've been broken people. And because in our brokenness, we haven't respected who we are, because we've just made such a mess of our lives. So we haven't respected the person we are, and we're beginning to build back self-respect. But weak boundaries will erode that self-respect. And men often don't relapse because of one big decision, but because of a series of small boundary crossings. Let me say that again. Men often don't relapse because of one big decision. That isn't often the cost of it, but it is almost 99% a situation of a series of small boundary crossings which we have just let slip, that we have blurred, that we have perhaps not completely put the boundary in place, or we've crossed it and we know what we've done. But in our weakness, we've crossed the boundary. So recovery is protected in these small moments, where these small boundaries are in place, and we need to be really, really careful not to cross them. So learning to set boundaries without guilt. Let's just look at this. Guilt will often appear when boundaries are new. This is something you'll find will happen. But that doesn't mean the boundary is wrong. It just means it's unfamiliar. Remember, we are putting boundaries in place, and perhaps we've never had boundaries. So it's putting a boundary in that's alien to us because we've never dealt with boundaries. But what will happen is it will be a bit uncomfortable and a bit unfamiliar to us, but it is protecting us. Remember that at all times. You don't need to justify your recovery. You don't need to justify it. You don't need permission to protect it. Saying no is not rejection. It is self-respect. Sometimes saying no to the drink, saying no to the offer of the drug taking, or saying no. And I guess this is coupled with also with willpower, which we've talked about previously. But I think at this point we've kind of built some willpower within our lives, because we are escaping our addiction, whatever that is. So we're progressing through our recovery now. So we're looking at boundaries and putting something healthy in place in our lives to really, really intentionally help us. So what about boundaries with people or places or you? Because boundaries aren't just in one thing. Boundaries are in multiple things. Let me unpack this for us now. Boundaries are not only external. Boundaries can very much apply to relationships, people. People will often drain us. We'll notice this more in our recovery, because as we're moving out and detaching from some of the people that haven't been helpful for us, that have kept us in our addiction. And you know what I mean by this? We might have to lose some people in our lives, some friends maybe, that aren't helpful for us, now we're trying to recover from the very thing that has taken us down that path we never want to go back to. And maybe some of these friends or some of these people in our lives are still in that place, and they would want to pull us back into it. So we might have to be intentional now about putting boundaries within the context of relationships or friends or people we have been doing life with or have done life with, maybe for a long time. So this is a serious thing. This is quite a serious decisions we have to put into place with our recovery. They might be also applicable to places. What do I mean by that? Well, some places might trigger you. Some places that you may have been to or know, or areas or some situations that have been unhealthy when you were in your addiction would trigger us back, would trigger our mind back to maybe some of our addiction and our addictive patterns and ways when we're in our dark moments. And perhaps we need to put boundaries in certain places we've been to or gone, or I don't know, I don't know, I'm just trying to think off the top of my head, maybe some pubs or some places we used to hang out, some clubs that weren't healthy for us, that would trigger us. So we need to be mindful about certain situations and places, physical perhaps places, where we need to put some boundaries in. And what about us? Well, internal habits. We need to put some boundaries, quite an important one now, internally. And our habits that would try and again pull us off course with our recovery. Putting some serious boundary lines and boundary markers down in our lives, internally, where we would say, we would have the ability to say no when we have been saying yes. We now know out of our addiction, looking in from the outside in, how destructive our addictive behavior and patterns were for our lives. And I think at this moment, it will be easy, perhaps is not the right word, we will be stronger to be able to say no than perhaps we ever have been, because we are now in a healthier, better state of being. So I think we now need to put some healthy, positive boundaries in to learn how to say no to situations, people, friends, places. We don't have to return back to the very thing that has caused us a lot of harm. Let's be really sensible about that. Why would you want to go back to something that's caused you a lot of damage? Whether that be a past hurt, a past relationship, a past situation where, you were in a bad moment. Why would you want to go back there? I think if we're real and if we're honest, we wouldn't, would we? We would want to say no to those things. So integrity means honoring limits. Honoring limits even when no one else sees them. This isn't about other people. Remember, it's very much about us. Let's work on us, on the inside of us. So just in closing, integrity is who you are. Boundaries are how you protect it. You don't need to become rigid, but you need to become clear and honest. So let's have some clarity in our lives. For too long, our lives have been anything but clear. It has been cloudy, it has been messy, it has just been all over the place. We now need to put some intentional markers down with boundaries so we can have some clarity, and we'll be healthier men moving forward. I can guarantee that. The more you boundary align your lives, the less effort integrity will require, because we've done the hard bit. Integrity now will become easier for us to stay grounded. I hope this helped today. Stay steady. Please take a day at a time. Be kind to yourselves. And I'll see you on the next talk. All the best.